Now we're going to have a run through the morning's newspapers now and see what Saturday's papers have in them. Cambridge Jones has been delving through them for us. He's the award-winning photographer and broadcaster and is here with us now. Good morning to you. And very pleased to see that you put Dr. Spock at the top of your list. Or is it Mr. Spock? I thought he was Dr. Spock. Anyway,
yes.
Spock at the top of your list.
There's the child-rearing doctor, isn't there?
Oh, that's Dr. Spock, yes.
This is Mr. Spock. With the pointy ears. I love this. I mean, it's just so iconic to me, that the whole Star Trek years. But the fact they're just selling one ear, and they've got it from...
the other one?
Well, the thing is as well, it doesn't say it in this article, but in the leader they say there are 3 ears, because there's obviously the right ear, the left ear, and then the final front ear.
Oh, dear.
And that's their leader. Can't argue with that.
You can't argue with that. But £700 for a 2-inch lump of plastic, as they put it. I mean, that is a lot of money, isn't it?
I'm surprised it's not more expensive, actually. Didn't go for more.
Yeah, we were just saying, we thought we were expecting thousands, because there's so... Trekkie fans are just insane.
Are so into it. Yeah. Are you a Trekkie, then?
I'm not. I mean, I loved it, and I loved it in the sort of way it sort of seemed to teach you morals in a sort of strangely, almost like a Western. If you strip back society and just say, OK, good person, bad person, what do you do? I loved it on that level, but I'm not a Trekkie.
No, it also taught you who looks good in one of those tight nylon tops and who doesn't. Let's move on to The Independent now. And easy to forget that today is the boat race, when there are protests going on in London as well. Anyway, tell us what The Independent's take on this is.
Well, I mean, the first thing is, it is easy to forget, and I did forget. So I was looking at the paper and thought, and then it occurred to me that it's such an oddity that this is apparently watched in some enormous number of countries. 200 million people or something around the world, and I'm thinking it's not even it's 2 universities in our country, and it's not a sport that gets a coverage beyond this race, really. I mean, on a minor level.
Apart from at the Olympics.
At the Olympics, yeah. And there's so much, suddenly, this one race on this one day. The thing that caught my eye here is this notion of they're training through visualization. So rather than going out and rowing particularly, they're using sort of hypnotherapy and stuff to say, imagine you're at the moment just where you're going to lose, and can you give it that extra bit of... And they're using that same sort of in-the-zone type stuff that Beckham used in the...
The psychology of that kind of endurance sport, it must be extraordinary, of how you just keep yourself going when everything hurts so badly.
Yeah. And this is the first time, I think, for a long time, where most of the people are from Britain in the rowing team.
And I can guess which side you're supporting.
Well, you can't, in fact, because I live in Oxford.
You're Cambridge living in Oxford.
Let's not
How
go
very
there.
confusing. OK, let's move on, shall we, to a story in the Daily Telegraph about today's... Actually, it's not. It's about yesterday's speech by Ed Miliband, isn't it? You talk, we listen, or...
Yeah, I mean, there's 2... But it was today, it was partly about today that I chose it. I mean, there are 2 things that made me think here. One, it seems to me an odd accusation to make to your opponents that you're trying to be divisive, given that the basic strategy for most politicians probably is to bring as many people as possible to the table. So the idea you're going to chop them in half and get rid of one lot seems an odd accusation to make. But that just occurred to me. But the other thing I think...
He's arguing, just to put it into context, Ed Miliband is saying that this government is pitting the private sector against the public sector and against the middle classes, against the very rich, isn't he? That's his argument.
And he's replaying it back to the Thatcher era, where he says the society was very divided and you were either for or against her, and that. In some ways, he might be right, but I'm not sure it's them doing it and not him. And I think him turning up today to do this speech is interesting in that context, not least because there sort of seemed to be a consensus at the time of the election that all parties needed to make cuts, and they were not being honest about how much those cuts needed to be. So to then appear giving a speech to say...
And even as recently as yesterday, he was saying that Labour weren't promising to make cuts, they wouldn't make cuts as deeply, so to be at a march that's against
he's
cuts...
treading, isn't it? It's... I don't know. I mean, I'm instinctively I want to believe in him, but I'm finding it hard at the moment.
Well, yes, the other criticism that the Conservatives are keen to push of him attending the march is saying, well, it's old Labour, it's back with the unions, it's not necessarily... He's not the unifying figure he's making out to be, is what they're saying.
That's the danger that I think may lead him to be divisive inadvertently, as it were, precisely because of that. OK, let's take a quick look at overnight television as seen by Giles Coren in The Times. There's so much in this Giles Coren article that I loved. I mean, it's the notion that the Director General has said we might have to turn off the TV from 10:35 p.m. to 6 a.m. in order to save the 20% of the licence fee that they're having to cut. And Giles Corrin is making the point of, terrific, maybe we'll talk to people, have dinner parties, read books and stuff. But then he goes on to sort of say, but not on your iPad, not on your Kindle, we're stopping that, you've got to pick up proper books. But there's some lovely phrases in here, like this has got the outgoing Director General written all over it. And then he goes on to say, because of you've got all these other channels and Sky Plus and stuff, he says, and ways will have to be found to put a stop to all this Sky Plus, V minors, BT equals nonsense, or people will be forever up all night. I love the idea that he sort of, he thinks he's created a space briefly and then realises, no, the world's moved on anyway.
He can't get us all just playing Scrabble into the early hours.
Exactly.
Cambridge Jones, good to see you. Thank you for taking us through your selection of the papers. You're watching Sunrise on our website at skynews.com. More trouble in the Middle East.